I'm Ryan from ExtremeTerrain.com, and in this episode of Throttle Out, I'm going to be walking you around my personal TJ and adding on a couple of parts that I've wanted for a little while now. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel to check out other great Jeep content as well as some other Jeep builds. And this is my 98 TJ. I've had this Jeep since I turned 16 and it's been through a couple of different lift kits. This Jeep used to be my daily driver until I went up to 35-inch tires and got killed on fuel mileage. So now this is a Jeep that gets me to and from the trails as well as pushes a little bit of snow in the wintertime. As you can tell, this isn't a beauty queen, this isn't a Jeep that was built for style. This was definitely a function over form build. Almost everything that I've bolted onto this Jeep was because it works and it helps the Jeep work better on the road or off the road. So let me take you around, I'll show you what's currently installed on the Jeep, and then we're gonna go ahead and add a couple of new seats that I've needed for a little while now. Starting at the side of the Jeep, I have a set of body armor rock sliders installed. And I know some of the strongest sliders you can get for a TJ are the type that you drill through the body, but I wasn't ready for that type of commitment, so I went with this set that bolt onto the body bolts. And I can tell you that I've put these through some serious abuse, and they've done a great job at protecting the rockers on my Jeep. I have some additional skid plate protection underneath, but we'll get to that in a second. Of course, one of the first things that you'll notice when you look at the Jeep is the lift and the wheels and the tires. I don't really have a lift kit installed on the Jeep at this point. I have a lot of different components that are built to support a set of 35-inch tires, give me plenty of clearance, plenty of travel, so this thing works really, really well off-road. I went with 5.5-inch springs and all of the supporting mods that we'll take a look at once we get underneath the Jeep. The tires that I currently have installed are a set of BFG KM2s that are 35 by 1250, and I really like these tires both on-road and off-road. Those are wrapped around a set of Procomp 1079 15 by 8-inch wheels. And I really like the 8-inch wheel with the 12.5-inch tire. It gives me plenty of additional sidewall pressure, so I can air these things down to around 11 pounds when I'm off-road, giving me a ton of traction and a really comfortable ride on the trail, all without risking losing a bead. Up front here, I also have a set of KC Highlight Slim Lights, and these are long-range lights on a set of the KC A-pillar mounts. And I had these lights set up to hit just above and outside of my headlights. I use these a lot on those dark back roads as well as on the trail when it starts to get a little bit dark. These are great at adding some light on the gutters so you can see if any animals are going to be crossing in front of you. This is one of my favorite mods for driving at night. I have also upgraded the headlights. Up here, I went with a set of Hella's H4 conversion housings, which actually give you a really nice pattern for a reflector and bulb setup if you don't want to go all the way up to a projector headlight, which can be more expensive. So I went with those reflectors and a set of the Raxium H4 conversion headlights. This combination gives you a pretty sharp cutoff, a ton of light, and if you have them aimed properly, you get a lot of usable light without blinding oncoming traffic, which is really what it's all about. The other thing I have up front here is one half of my Viair heavy-duty onboard air system. This Jeep doesn't have ABS, so I use that ABS tray for mounting my compressor, and you'll see the rest of that system underneath the Jeep once we get it up in the air. What you'll notice I don't have is any kind of aftermarket bumper or winch. This is just the stock bumper with the floaties taken off the end of it. Now, of course, this is a project. I've always wanted a front bumper and a winch, just haven't found quite the right one for me yet, but that will be something that's on the short list to add soon. Out back, I installed the LOD Signature Series rear bumper and tire carrier with the built-in reverse lights. I really like this setup because the tire carrier has a lot of features built into it. It has a greasable spindle and it has a latch that will keep working even when it gets some rust on it, which of course my Jeep has some of. This also gives you a lot of adjustability to keep the tire nice and low and to keep it tight up against the carrier so it's not going to rattle around. Now, if you're paying attention, you'll notice that this is not a KM2 and it's not a 35. When I used to have 33s on the Jeep, I never rotated the spare in, so when I bought the 35s, I only purchased 4 of them. Hopefully, the next time I need tires, which will be soon, I'll be going up another tire size, and at that point, I'll go ahead and get another full-size spare. But getting back to the carrier, this does have those built-in reverse lights, which are really nice because it can be a little bit hard to see behind the TJ with the tinted windows and a tire mounted back here. I have that wired to both a switch on the dash as well as the factory reverse light circuit, so those will come on when you switch the Jeep into reverse. This also has a couple of recovery points, which I've used quite a few times. They work great, they're nice and solid thanks to the frame tie-ins that come with this bumper, and it also has a 2-inch receiver in the center, which gives me the ability to move around a small landscaping trailer. Of course, you're not going to be towing anything big and heavy with a TJ, however, it is nice to have that little bit of functionality. This carrier also includes a mount for my Firestick CB antenna. I have the CB mounted in the Jeep, which is great for trail runs, and this can also hold a high lift jack, but I generally don't haul one of those around with me. Out back here, I've also installed a set of LED taillights, which are just a set of factory plug-and-play style LED taillights. I just got tired of replacing light bulbs in the taillight, so I decided to upgrade to a set of LED. I really like how bright they are, and I really like the crisp, clean on and off that they provide, as well as the fact that they'll last a lot longer than an incandescent bulb. That's about it for the top side of the Jeep. Most of what I've installed is more visible from underneath because it is going to be drivetrain, running gear, and armor stuff. So let's get this thing on the rack and I'll show you what I mean. So again, most of the mods I put on the Jeep are functional and they're there to support having 35-inch tires. Those of you that know TJs know that 33 is really the cutoff for something that you can have be very functional without putting a ton of parts and even more money into it. Once you step up to 35s, you do have to do a couple of additional upgrades, which I have done. So starting with the lift kit, which again isn't really a kit, it's a lot of different pieces that I put together to make something that I think works really well for me. I have a set of Rubicon Express 4.5-inch springs that do provide a little bit over 5 inches of lift to my relatively light TJ, and that is plenty of room to give me clearance to articulate and flex even with the 35s. To help me get all of that articulation off-road, of course, I have a set of sway bar disconnects, and I went with the JKS quicker disconnects. They've always remained nice and quiet, no rattles. They're fairly easy to disconnect and reconnect when I'm getting on and off the trail, and I really like that mod. I also like the fact that they're adjustable, so I can get the sway bar pretty much exactly level or exactly where I want it when it's sitting on the ground. So those have always worked really, really well for me. As far as control arms on this Jeep, I went with a set of Krawler control arms. All 8 of the control arms are Krawler. That gives me the adjustability to set the pinion angle and to set my caster angle on the Jeep, as well as to get a ton of articulation because I'm not limited by having any sort of rubber joints. I'm gonna have Heim joints on at least one end of all the control arms. Again, just giving me the most amount of adjustability and the most amount of flex and articulation off-road. Up here for steering, I went with the Currie Currectlync steering system. This is going to be a very beefy steering. It's not going to have any sort of flex in it, even when you're driving down the road, hitting big bumps with these big tires. This isn't going to flex at all. It's going to hold up really well. Of course, it's adjustable as well so that you can set your toe, and you can also adjust the drag link to set the steering wheel nice and centered. And it's a system that's held up really well for me ever since I've installed it. Bolted onto that, I have the Redneck Ram hydraulic assist system. Now, there are some other systems. PSC makes a hydro assist system that is going to be a little bit better than this one. It's going to put out a little bit more pressure, a little bit more volume. It's going to assist you even more than this does. However, for what I paid for this system, for how easy it was to install, and for what a difference it made in turning these 35-inch tires, I really, really like this system. It comes with a drilled and threaded steering box that will allow you to feed your steering ram, and you pretty much just put that ram exactly where your factory steering stabilizer would have been. And again, I can park my Jeep pretty much right up next to a curb with one finger, turn the steering wheel to the right, and it'll push the whole Jeep to the side. That's how much more power you get out of that hydro assist system. I really like that. And to support this system, I have added a power steering cooler up front because I did go through a couple of pumps. They just started leaking on me, and that cooler has really helped out with that problem. As far as shocks on this Jeep, I went with a set of Bilstein 5100s that are measured and spec'd for the amount of lift that I have. Those have worked really well for me. A lot of people say that a Bilstein is a stiffer shock, and I do agree. On the road, it is a little bit stiff, but I really like them off-road, and they do provide a good amount of rigidity, which will counteract a lot of the body roll you can get with a bigger lift like this. As far as the axles on the Jeep, I still have the factory Dana 30 and Dana 35 housing, and a lot of you are saying, you have a Dana 35 with 35-inch tires, how is it not exploded yet? Well, I do have chromoly shafts in both the front and the rear axles, which definitely help with that. I know that the axle, especially the rear one, is going to be a little bit of a weak point for me. And I always have that in the back of my mind when I'm wheeling. Of course, I've said it before, this is a project. I'd love to upgrade the axles, and that's probably something that's coming down the line. But for now, I've been able to wheel this thing pretty hard without any issues. Aside from the chromoly shafts that are in these axles, I also have an ARB air locker in the rear. That's why I have that Viair heavy duty system, as well as for airing up, but that heavy duty onboard air system runs my rear ARB air locker. And up front, I have a Detroit True Track. So I have a posi up front, which gives you some great traction, and the selectable air locker in the back. So this thing really does work very, very well off-road. Keeping these axles centered underneath the Jeep, I have a set of both front and rear adjustable JKS track bars. I like having an adjustable track bar because it allows you to center the axle underneath the Jeep, and having a beefy track bar like this one with a heim joint on one end is going to give you a ton of articulation, all without flexing. I've also added a little bit of additional armor to my Jeep. I was doing an oil change one time and I saw a gash about 3 inches long that stopped just before the drain plug on the oil pan, and I knew it was time for an oil pan skid plate. So I went and found just a Craigslist find Mopar skid plate with one of the old lift kits that I had on this. I couldn't mount it in a factory way, so I went ahead and made a couple of mounts that go up to the motor mounts. This thing has worked really well for me. It's very, very strong, and from the bends and the scars you can see on the bottom of it, it's definitely gotten some use off-road. Let's move to the back and I'll show you what's going on back there. Out back, you can see the other half of that Viair heavy-duty onboard air system, the 2.5-gallon tank, and of course the compressor feeds that tank. I have one line that goes back up to underneath the hood to a quick disconnect so I can air up my tires very easily, and the manifold that feeds the ARB air locker comes off of that tank as well. Now, this axle here is driven by a Tom Wood custom drive shaft, and that's fed from an Advanced Adapters slip yoke eliminator kit. Now, those of you that know TJs know that when you get over 4 inches of lift, it helps to have a slip yoke eliminator and a CV drive shaft to help eliminate any of those driveline vibrations that you might otherwise have. I really like this slip yoke eliminator kit. It served me really well ever since I've had it installed, and I have no vibrations. The only other thing that I have underneath the Jeep here are a set of rock lights, and I've installed those underneath the doors. Now, I don't do a ton of night wheeling, but I do have those lights wired into the door switches so they come on automatically when you open the doors, and they've gotten a lot of use as puddle lights. So that's pretty much everything I currently have installed on the Jeep. Now let's get it on the ground and get those seats installed. So that's it for the driver's side, and we're going to install this passenger side seat in just a second, but I wanted to talk you through why I like these seats so much. The Corbeau Sport is a seat that looks very much like a factory seat. You can go ahead and install the Corbeau Moabs or the XR, the XRS seats, but they have much more of an aftermarket look, and for my Jeep, I really like the stock look. I also really like the fact that these seats have a good bit of bolstering to them. When I'm in those off-camber situations off-road, these are going to keep me in the seat, and even when you're just going around corners on-road, these give you a nice, secure feeling. The fact that you're buying a Corbeau seat means you're getting something that's very high quality. Corbeau's been around for a really long time, so you know these seats are going to both be comfortable and hold up really well for you. So we're going to get this seat bolted in the passenger side, then we're going to get this thing out on the road and see how these feel, both driving down the street and bouncing down the trail. So we got the seats all bolted up, and we wanted to take the Jeep out on the road, see how the seats feel when we're driving, and also hit a trail. Not that it's going to be any serious hardcore wheeling, but hit a trail just to see how they feel on a little bit of a bumpier terrain. And I have to say that compared to my very old 1998 seats, these do feel very firm, but I think it's something I'm going to get used to, and it's also something where the seats are going to break in a little bit as I use them. Other than that, the bolstering that's on these seats is really nice. I feel like I'm held very securely into the seat, going around corners. Not that you're flying around corners, you're not in a race car, but going around corners, these do hug you, they do feel pretty solid. And I think when you're in an off-road situation, especially an off-camber situation off-road, it's gonna feel pretty good then as well. So I'm looking forward to getting off-road. There's a little trail just up the road here. We're gonna pull off, get for a little bit of a spin. It's pouring down rain right now, so it's definitely going to get a little bit muddy whether we like it or not, and we'll see how they feel on a bumpier road. So we're off on a little fire trail here, not doing any serious hardcore wheeling. We're not going to get in any off-camera situations. But as I suspected, it does feel really good to have the additional bolstering. That's probably my favorite part about these seats. It's the part that I like the most. And it's the part you really notice the most, aside from the additional firmness that I'm getting from these seats. But as I said before, I'm sure these are going to break in a little bit. They're just firm compared to my really beat factory seats from 1998. Overall, I'm really happy with my choice in going with Corbeau. So that's it for this episode of Throttle Out. I hope you enjoyed seeing the mods I currently have on my Jeep, as well as the newest mod, these Corbeau seats that I'm really happy with so far. As I've said a million times, a Jeep, like any project car, is never finished, so comment below and let me know what you think my next mod should be. But for now, remember, when in doubt, throttle out.